Human knowledge has investigated at length the processes that make life possible inside the cells. DNA has been coded, and we know how many genes there are inside human cells and what they do. Our body contains around 100,000 billion cells. When you look at yourself in the mirror, you just see one person, but in fact, you are a community, an organism of around 100,000 billion cells, an infinite number of cells. Let us take a general look at a cell structure. Inside, there are numerous structures called organelles, and in the center, there is the nucleus that contains the DNA. How can a cell live? To be able to live, a cell must receive everything it needs from the blood. It is the blood that carries the water, oxygen, and all the other nutrients it needs. If the cell does not receive these essential substances to survive, it dies. For example, when a coronary artery is blocked, the blood flows slower or does not flow at all to a part of the heart, which means the cells no longer receive the elements they need from the blood and therefore are unable to survive. This means that our life depends on our cells working perfectly. But what happens inside the cells? Another important term is introduced here: the metabolism. Everything starts from the metabolism, which is a fascinating word that everyone knows, but which is used far too superficially in our opinion. There is a lot of movement going on inside the cells. Just think, inside a cell, there are around 100,000 biochemical reactions every second. This is a general diagram of all the biochemical reactions that take place in our organism. As you can see, it is extremely complex. Each dot you can see is a molecule, which is constantly transformed into other molecules. How are these transformations possible? Thanks to the enzymes. There are numerous enzymes inside the cells. To give you an example, imagine this is an enzyme. The enzymes transform the molecules that reach the cell from the blood into other molecules. Molecule A becomes molecule B, and through a different enzyme from the first one molecule, B becomes molecule C. Inside each cell, there are around 100,000 of these transformations, or should we say biochemical reactions, every second. What we eat causes a response from our organism, stimulating the production of hormones that act on the enzymes. Each type of food can follow different metabolic paths according to numerous complex factors. You should know that body fat production is controlled by the insulin hormone, which in turn controls the enzymes that produce it. We put on weight because we order our body to produce fat by what we eat. If insulin is stimulated, we start the metabolic path that synthesizes fat. When we eat, the food enters our mouth, passes along the esophagus into the stomach to finally reach the intestine. The food is digested inside the intestine and then is absorbed by a dense network of blood vessels. All the blood vessels in the intestine flow into a single blood vessel that carries the nutrient first to the liver and then to the heart, meaning that in the general blood circulation system, the nutrients are able to nourish all the cells. Everything we eat enters our blood very quickly. This is when our organism responds. A response that depends on what we have eaten. For example, let's take the foods that the majority of us love. If you eat these foods without fully understanding them, you will probably put on weight. If you learn to understand them, you will know the right time to eat them and enjoy them without putting on weight. These foods give a great amount of glucose intake to us humans, which in practice is sugar. You should know that each time the amount of glucose increases in our blood, our body responds by producing the insulin hormone. Calories are the unit of measure for thermal energy, which is heat. If you put your hand in front of the oven door, you will feel the heat it gives off. Heat can be called thermal energy. They are exactly the same thing. Have you ever wondered how international institutions manage to calculate the energy content of food, or the calories as we know them? This experiment is called the calorimetric bomb. You begin with a well-insulated container that does not allow the heat to pass from the inside out. Pour in some distilled water. Inside this container, place another small container saturated with oxygen. Add a thermometer and injectors. The food being analyzed is then normally put inside this combustion chamber. Now, combustion is triggered in the food that has already had its water removed and therefore burns. The food combustion produces thermal energy, the heat which raises the water temperature. This way, we can determine how much heat food produces when it is burnt. Or, in other words, how many calories it contains. You realize, of course, that there is no combustion reaction inside our cells. This sort of reaction does not take place. Our cells manage to support life because metabolism takes place inside them, which is controlled by the hormones, which regulate all the different enzymes. The hormones control the enzymes, and the enzymes stimulate the biochemical reactions, which is a much more complex concept than combustion reaction. Food is considered like medication. Depending on what we eat, our body gives a certain biochemical response. The response is different if we eat apples, pasta, fish, or vegetables. That is not all, though. The response by the organism is different for each single person. For example, when you have to take any medications, you have probably never thought about how many calories they produce. But you are certainly concerned about the effect they produce in your organism. It is the same thing with food. In the space of a few minutes, food causes a response from the organism. If we eat something at a certain time of the day that causes an excessive production of the only hormone that causes us to put on weight, insulin, it is very probable that we will put on weight. Each food can follow different metabolic paths depending on numerous complex factors.